Thank you so much, David, for inviting me to the meeting, and congratulations to all the day counters today. I'm in Estes Park, Colorado, and I just celebrated 21 months of sobriety. And I would like to start off by sharing, right, what my story, a little bit of my story, what things were like, what happened, and what I'm like now. And going back to the very beginning, right, I grew up in an upper middle class family. I had everything that I'd ever needed, wanted. I was comfortable. I had good parents. I had a good sister. I had a good upbringing. And all that being said, something in me was never right. There was always something missing. Despite having had everything, this foundation for success, there was something inside me that I always needed more. I always demanded more from my relationships. I never quite got what I wanted. I suffered from all kinds of fear. I was always perfectionistic. I was driven to excel in everything that I did out of this fear of just of not being loved, right? Not having enough, not having people around. I was just always in fear. And it's funny because I remember looking back and thinking, right, once I started drinking and using and falling into that path, I remember looking back and thinking, well, I never had any reason to go out there and drink and use. But I always wanted a reason to go out there and and to have some kind of reason for my life being the way that it was. And looking back on it now, right, it's like my alcoholism manifested itself in all of these other ways before I ever had that first drink. And that feeling, right, I won't talk a lot about my drug-a-log, my drunk-a-log, because it's not all that important, right? We all know the the symptoms of what this disease looks like and how it comes across throughout our lives, right? However, when I had that first drink, man, that was my solution, right? It did for me what I could have never done for myself. It was the first bit of relief I think I ever had. And I'd excelled. I was captain of my hockey team. I was drum major in marching band. I was, if you tell me I can't sing, I'll lead the chorus, right? It was always that way for me. And when I finally had that first drink, that was my first sensation of, right, I fit in. This works for me. It was my first time ever having that connection with God, right? It did for me what I could not do for myself. It made me feel like I finally fit in. I was comfortable in my own skin. I never knew who I was or what I wanted or what I was doing, how to interact with people. But once I had that first drink, it solved everything for me. Right? It did for me what I could not do for myself. And long story short, once I found that, right, what makes me an alcoholic is my mental obsession and the physical allergy. Right? Once I put something into my body, any substance, I cannot stop taking more of it. And I also can't stay stopped because I have this mental obsession, right? And for anybody who's new here tonight, there's the two key components of being an alcoholic, right? It's not how much we drank, what we drank, where we drank. It's that I have a mental obsession and I have a physical allergy. And once I experienced that for the first time, right, everything, it started out fun, right? We didn't do these things because they weren't fun, because they didn't work at some point, right? It's like first I started for fun, and eventually that turned into functioning, right? I was drinking, using, consuming to function, and eventually that turned into oblivion. And what that looked like for me, right, were felonies, overdoses, destroyed relationships, the whole gamut of what that looks like. And I came into my first meeting when I was 19. I came into a rehab, right? Everything came out. I like to refer to it as an overdose of reality, right? My family, everybody found out what I was doing, where everything was, what was happening, all the ins and outs, all my secrets were laid out on the table for the whole world to see. And that was something I needed. That was something that brought me into these rooms for the first time. And we talk about, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we talk about catching alcoholism through our ears, right? It's something I never knew that I had alcoholism until I came to a meeting. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought I was defected. I thought I was a lunatic. I thought I was insane. I thought I was a womanizer. I just thought I was worthless. I felt that way my whole life, right? And I could not understand what was wrong with me until, right, I came into rehab. I was forced into meetings, and that was the first time that I really started to understand alcoholism as a disease. And what the next few years looked like for me, my, we talk about in the book too, right, that half measures availed us nothing. I spent a long time on the fringes of AA. I spent a long time doing things halfway. I'd show up at meetings. I'm pretty good at picking up the phone. I would call some people. I never really knew how to be honest, at least the kind of honesty that's required for us to really change and experience the spiritual awakening that we talk about as a result of these steps. I never really got AA. I didn't realize how simple a lot of these suggestions in this program was. I would come to meetings, I would listen, I'd show up, I'd sit in the back, I'd talk to a couple of people, I'd leave early. I never did the whole deal. So I spent about 10 years of my life in and out of meetings. I could stay sober for a few months. I would go back out, experience a whirlwind of consequences all over again, the guilt, shame, remorse, and then come back into another meeting, try it all over again. And I never, again, it was funny. I was at a meeting in DC. I travel for a living. I was at a meeting in DC at the DuPont Circle Club, and I walked in. The guys were like, how long have you been sober? And I told them, and I was like, well, this is my first time working all 12 steps. I had a lot of relapse in my story. And these men, they said, you've never relapsed because you never worked the steps. It's like it wasn't they didn't see it as a relapse because I had never actually worked the steps. I just came to meetings, I took what I wanted, and I left the rest. And it doesn't work that way, right? It's half measures availed us nothing. We all have different bottoms, right? Which is the wonderful thing about this program. It takes whatever it takes for us to come here. However, despite any of my bottoms, my bottom this last time, right, it wasn't waking up from an overdose. It wasn't an arrest. It wasn't somebody breaking up with me. It was a, Tuesday afternoon. I woke up, there was just a little bit left. My life sucked. I was miserable. I felt pathetic. I was over it. And I went into a meeting, and we don't know what those days are going to look like. There were countless times in the past where I really thought this was it, right? If I want a moment to be it, this is going to be it. I'm going to go out with a bang. And it never looked that way for me. And I finally had enough willingness to really give this a shot, right? Like I said, I spent years of my life just fading in and out of AA. I always had a sponsor, but I wasn't being sponsored, right? I had somebody I could call my sponsor. I would give them a call, small talk a little bit, but I was incapable of the amount of honesty and acceptance that's required for us in this program to really experience change. And needless to say, I acquired a lot of knowledge over that time, right? But knowledge is not experience, right? I can learn all these things in the book. I can learn about God. But what we're looking for here is a spiritual experience. Talks about, I had it pulled here in We Agnostics, right? It says, page 45, well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. That's the main object of our literature, of the big book. But I can find a power greater than myself that can do for me what I couldn't do for myself. Right? So anyways, I had all this knowledge, but I didn't have the experience. And the way we would develop that experience is through working the steps, right? The steps are our guide to being able to start developing faith. And the way it looks like for me, I was taught whenever I give a lead to talk about how I found my sense of a higher power. And I'll reiterate this for all of you. Your sense of a higher power can be whatever it is for you, right? This is a personal deal, whatever it is that works for you. I choose to say God because it's the easiest thing for me to say and refer to. However, the experiences for me, the type of things that helped me develop faith, for instance, were praying on something, right? If I were dealing with something, any kind of conflict, any deep issue that I did not want to deal with, was praying on it, talking to other men in the program about it, and then taking an action, right? This is an action-based program. And I would take an action, and all of a sudden I would realize I'm okay, right? I'm okay. I don't have that fear. And that is for me how I started developing faith. We're just taking these small actions. I remember for a long time, even with Zoom meetings, right? I was terrified of people seeing me. And I kept my camera off. I felt ugly. I felt insecure. I didn't want anybody to see me. I didn't think I had anything worth saying. And by taking these small actions, right? By praying on it, saying, God, help me have the courage to do this. Help me to not worry. Help me to be useful. And then taking these small actions and just seeing, wow, I'm really okay. That's for me how I really started developing faith in my concept of a higher power, my concept of God. And after having had worked these 12 steps for the first time in my life, right? This was the first time I ever worked them. And I'm coming up on almost 2 years. For the first time, I've spent 10 years in and out, working some of the steps, doing some things, not everything. I wasn't fully invested. And this time I've managed to make a humble beginning in all 12 steps. And for the first time, experienced that spiritual awakening, right? That thing that we've all craved, that we all wanted, and that we found through alcohol and drugs. And I found it for the first time. And I didn't think, right? It's like, I didn't believe that any of this stuff was going to work. I was hopeless. I was out. This was my last stop. I didn't have any more tricks to pull. I didn't have anyone else to talk to. I didn't have anywhere else to go. This was it. And when I finally gave it a go, a real go, it worked. And the way AA is designed, the way these steps are designed, someone described this to me a couple months ago, but it's almost as if it were like an assembly line to produce spiritual awakening, right? You do these steps, you work this, and you're guaranteed to have a spiritual awakening. Right? We're not saying, oh, you might if you do these things. No, if you do them to the best of your ability, as honestly as you can, and you do them, you will have that spiritual awakening. Right? This is a promise in our literature, and it's something that I've seen come true over and over again in the lives of recovering alcoholics. And in terms of what I'm like now, after having had worked these steps, for the first time, for years in my life, for my entire life, up until getting sober, I never had an experience, a moment of serenity. Never. It was always, again, I was always dominating other people or over depending on them. All my relationship, my entire existence was built upon faulty dependencies. Other people, places, and things to make me feel okay. Whatever I can do to feel okay. And I never felt that way. No matter how much I got, it never worked. And for the first time in my life, I have days, whole days where I'm completely serene, right? Where nothing can seem to bother me. And of course, I still have fears, I have insecurities, I have these issues like we all do, right? But the difference is that they don't dominate my life anymore. They don't control my actions. They don't taint my motives, my intentions. And another thing for me too is that as a result of working these steps, my tolerance for pain is non-existent almost, right? It's still there, but for the longest time, right, all I was doing was running around life creating wreckage everywhere around me. There was nowhere that I didn't touch that didn't melt, that didn't disappear, right? It's like it felt like everything I touched was being destroyed. And all that pain, all that wreckage in my past, now I have no tolerance for pain, right? I can't seem to lie and get away with it. I can't seem to cheat. I can't do these things. And I won't lie to you and say that sometimes that I don't want to. Sometimes there have been times, right, where my intentions can sway, right? But I can't get away with it anymore. I can't. This is an all or nothing deal, right? Where we say God is everything or God is nothing. It's like I have to be fully involved, fully committed, fully in this deal. And in terms of progress, not perfection, right? Talk about progress, not perfection isn't an excuse to just to start messing everything up, but we're still aiming towards perfection. We're never going to get there, but we're aiming towards it. We have our eyes towards perfection. And I think that that's the goal, right? So the person I am today, as a result of doing this work, I'm able to be serene. I'm able to be helpful. I'm able to feel connected, right? Which is something that I did not feel for the longest time. I'm able to have a real partnership with another human being instead of me depending on them or me controlling them. I'm able to be a real partner in all of my relationships, right? And these are things that I never, ever imagined would have been possible for me. And I don't have a whole lot more to say, but I do hope that my talk today was able to help somebody out there. And I also wanted to mention that I am no authority on AA. So anything you heard today is not AA. I'm just another guy recovering and doing this deal the best that he can.